Hey guys, welcome into Locky Top Sports. This is Josh and Naveen coming to you live to react to the Tennessee Vols and LSU Tigers basketball game tonight at the Food City Center at Thompson Bowling Arena. We just want to recap a couple things that we saw tonight. Huge win for the Vols in SEC play. 88 to 68 was the final score, so a 20-point win. Tennessee finally broke the 13.5-point spread curse tonight. It looked a little shaky, a couple points in the second half of Tennessee fading the 13.5 spread again, but huge performance from Dalton Connect tonight, and also Jordan Gainey had a huge night. So it was basically our guards showed up huge for us in different stretches of the game. Defense was kind of inconsistent, but still got the spread back out to 20. So Naveen, just kind of walk me through what you saw tonight with our guard play versus our bigs, and then just kind of the Jekyll and Hyde of the defensive effort throughout the game, where we ballooned out to a 26-point lead and then kind of shrank it back down a couple times.
Yeah, so I want to start with Dalton today. 27 points, 7 rebounds. He's our rebound leader, which is weird. Nobody else had more than 5. Adu with 5. Awaka barely played. He was our key player today. I feel like near the second half, about 5 to 8 minutes to go, he was chucking a bunch. I will say that. Very strong performance by Ziegler. He's back again with the high assist numbers, 9 assists, 4 steals. He was really a menace today. LSU guards couldn't really keep up with him or Dalton. But yeah, Gainey, Ziegler, Connect all with multiple steals. Connect with 2, Gainey with 3. Also big performance by Gainey too, 18 points. Zakai 17 points. Just very encouraging guard play today. This was a key spot for us. Like, you just beat Tennessee at Tennessee. Would you take the foot off the gas a little bit versus LSU? Maybe you don't cover, but they do. They do get the job done at home. They got to go on the road to A&M next. Kind of difficult environment, but we should be favored pretty heavily in that game, and we should take care of that as well. I just wanted to call out the guards today because they all basically, other than Triple J, they really all showed up. And Triple J didn't play that bad either. 8 points. That's kind of his sweet spot as well.
Yeah, so it was really good effort from Triple J tonight. So no Triple J hate. Big performance, like you said, to recap from our guards with Connect and Ziegler. I think they combined, it was 27 and 17. So what's that? 50 points, 40 points.
Yeah.
Math in public's hard. 50 points.
Yeah, more than 50. Like if you add Dalton, Connect, and Ziegler together,
44, I think.
44, yeah. And then if you add Gainey again, it's over 60. So
yeah.
Yep.
So they accounted for a lot of our scoring tonight. I'm starting to get a little concerned about Jonas. He backdoored himself into a double-digit scoring performance against Kentucky, and then tonight he kind of backdoored it again to sneak into 10. Should that be in your mind, Naveen? Should that be a concern for us moving forward? Because he's kind of been no-showing the last couple of games.
Yeah, I'm not too concerned about points. I am concerned about rebounds. They really out-rebounded us pretty hard, 37 to 25. Offensive rebounds 16 to 5. If that's a better team, better players, it would be a much closer game. But assists 23 to 7. We saw some baby Spurs basketball going on today. A lot of finding the open man, finding the open space. Very encouraging. Steals, we were on their ass. 13 to 5, 6 blocks to 1, and we were +8 on turnovers. 7 to their 15. We did score a bunch in the paint. There were a lot of driving today. But like, you know, we can't really give up the second chance points versus better teams, right? If you're trying to face North Carolina, you're trying to face Purdue, Kansas, those are the teams that will crush you. Maybe not in middle tier, SEC play, you'll get away with it, but not in the tournament. So we got to tighten that up by the tournament. Yeah, we just need more rebounds. Like, dude, you as a forward or a center, you getting out rebounded by Dalton Connect should be concerning to you. It should be a personal pride point to crash the boards,
especially when you're 7 feet tall.
Right. Like Adu is not Ziegler size; he's Adu size. So that's one thing that I would say. I don't like to be very nitpicky in a win. I think it's important to be critical in both times. But yeah, 6'11", 240, you need more than 5 rebounds, bro. That's what I'll say.
Yeah. So on the spirit of not being nitpicky on a 20-point thrashing of an opponent, right? I think the scoreboard doesn't do the way that the game kind of played out justice, because you look at it, Tennessee had inflated a lead into the second half to 26 points. And we saw that evaporate within like a 3.5 minute scoring drought. LSU cut the lead to 8 points.
Right.
I think if we're playing a more quality opponent, maybe like an Alabama or an Auburn, maybe even in Texas A&M on Saturday, we get ourselves in a lot of trouble there, and maybe get ourselves back into a very competitive game. And if LSU was better, they probably could have either tied the game or, maybe won. So there were a lot of bright spots, obviously, with the runs that we had. And then when we needed to make a defensive stop, we did. So it was almost like we were on the precipice of bleeding out, but then we would find a tourniquet and just put it on really fast and then score, like going a 10-0 run. So it was really the most, I guess, intriguing offensive performance that I've seen Tennessee give so far this year, but also the most enigmatic performance overall. Right? It was just really odd. Really didn't see them get into a flow except for those crazy spurts. So I saw Andy jump in here. Let's bring him in and get his thoughts on what he saw tonight's performance from Tennessee. Just to recap, Andy, we kind of talked about the back and forth between Tennessee's lack of defensive efficiency at times, and then just going on huge scoring droughts, but then just turning it on, and then ballooning leads throughout the second half, and then we finished up with a 20-point dub. What was your thoughts and your key takeaways from tonight's win?
First I want to say it's a well-deserved win. Great performance. As you guys mentioned, we went through a scoring drought, and it got into a little scary, seeing the lead evaporate from I think it was 26 down to single digit. I thought there were at times where I would want the coach to call the timeout, sort of, get the players back in the game. Like, hey guys, like, you can't let off the gas here. And I wanted Barnes to do that a little bit earlier before LSU just go on a run with the on our side with the infamous scoring drought. But again, they didn't. They sort of focused. They didn't lose their focus at the end of the day, and was able to build the lead back up and secured it. So I'd have to say it's a great victory. What I really liked was the ball movement in the first half. I thought both ZZ and Dalton Connect did a great job finding the open teammates and sometimes taking it to the rim themselves. ZZ really got off to a hot start, just firing 4 for 4 from 3. Connect starting out with the aggressive drive to the rim, getting the free throws, just kind of like a statement, showing LSU what kind of game it's going to be. So I thought that was great early on. And then, of course, as aggressive as they were continuing to find open teammates, which I thought was awesome. During the scoring drought, I personally felt like the ball movement was sort of stagnating a little bit.
Yeah, it got kind of stale. When you say it almost seemed like they were like, okay, we've got this huge lead, so we're going to give the ball to Dalton and just play ISO. Is that
right,
kind of what you saw?
Yeah, and I think it was pretty obvious that they felt like this was a dub in the bag, and they're like, all right, like let's give him some stats, get him to the let's secure the SEC Player of the Year, let's make him into all American, let's get his points per game average up against Zach Edey. Don't get me wrong, it was great to see him almost drop a 30 burger. And when you look at the final stats, it doesn't look that bad. 9 of 19, almost 50% for 27 points. So it's pretty efficient. But just kind of looking at first half versus the second half, it was very obvious. It felt like watching like a 2005 Kobe Bryant on the terrible Lakers team.
Fair enough. Yeah, it did seem a bit forced at times to try to get Dalton to score. So, moving forward, and me and Naveen kind of talked about that. I think we got to have way more offensive efficiency, kind of spread out like we saw Saturday night. Because I think when we go through those scoring droughts, and it's so much different this year, I think, because we have Dalton, and I think some of the scoring droughts go back to like we just said, the staleness of feeding it to him and then just playing ISO. Where in years past, it's just like we didn't have a guy. We didn't have a dude that could just go out there and score like Dalton Connect can, right? So, Naveen, I'd like to kind of get your perspective of when you see Tennessee going on that drought. Do you think it's just a result of they want to get Dalton more touches and get him more points, or do you think it is a breakdown of their offensive game plan, or maybe a bad scout? Like, what do you think that Tennessee consistently does wrong to find themselves in those scoring droughts?
So a couple things. I think first, some of the blame is on Rick Barnes, right? He, like, typically when you go from 26 to 12, you'd like to take a timeout in between around 16 to 18, right? Like, hey guys, let's reset. Are you guys tired? Like, even just like you guys have been on the court for a long time, there's no subs. That kind of approach. Number two is I think it's exacerbated when you don't offensive rebound, right? Like that's part of the problem, right? Like you get one shot, often it's a bad shot, and they immediately get the ball. If you're going to take a lot of shots and chuck like that, like you need someone down low to help you extend possessions,
clean it up,
like even just get fouled. Like I think we brought this up before. Like if you're in the rut, just try to drive and get fouled. I think that's one part of it. Obviously, you can expect the guy to nonstop shoot like 50%. It's pretty hard in the college game, especially when they know, there's no secret what the offensive game plan is. It's give it to Dalton. So they have extra guys on, they have help defenders. Sometimes it's a double team, sometimes it's a trap. So I think, it's on Rick to kind of like game plan for that. And I think give the guys a break in those time periods, right? Like, I think that's what we could have had today to never dip back to double digits. So I think those are my keys for scoring droughts. And I think what happens is like, when you give the ball to the same guy over and over again, like it's hard to go from rest to motion and change that back and forth. And that's what we kind of see, like 5 plays in a row, ISO Dalton. Like if you're, Gainey or Adu, you're not used to getting the ball for the past like 6-7 minutes. So that's right. What trips them up.
Yeah. So I holistically agree. And that's kind of my takes on that too. I'll tell you a good surprise that we've seen the last couple of games, man, is, my boy, Jordan Gainey. He has been a huge spark for us offensively. He had a lot of hustle points tonight. You saw him kind of diving into the row of media there on the baseline tonight. Getting up some good, solid shots. And what do you think, Andrew, has really led to Jordan Gainey's reemergence, so to speak? And we're seeing him score better coming off that drought that he was in.
Confidence, really. Shooters like that, they go through the peaks and the valleys. Just generally speaking, he's not a bad 3-point shooter for his career, but just looking at this year, 29.7% from the three. That's terrible. That is really bad. I think in the modern game of basketball, you have to shoot at a minimum around like 34 and a half, 35%. I mean, for NBA, of course, and then for the college game, maybe around like 34% or so. And then that's just like the baseline if you're like a wing player. And then for someone to be shooting at 29%, rounded up 30%, pretty bad. But that being said, these types of players, they go through streaks. When they're hot, and then when they're cold, they're ice cold, a la J.R. Smith. And I think he just sort of like went into this drought and just couldn't dig himself out. Every time he sort of loses it, and that sort of shrinks the confidence down, and that results in less minutes. Also on a team like Tennessee that sort of values the teamwork, the defensive assignments, and so on. Like once your shots are not going in, you're not as engaged on defense, and all of that. I think it was just like a vicious cycle for him. But luckily, I think starting with the Kentucky game and hopefully tonight, it's a start of a nice bounce back. I don't see any hesitation when he gets the ball. He fires it, and I felt like Zakai really just looked out for him today. Like every open court transition three, every sort of a set plays. They set the screen with Adu coming out, then Zakai turns the corner and then finds Gainey. So it seems like perhaps this is Rick Barnes sort of scheming for Gainey to get open. But I like what I'm seeing so far, and hopefully he can start to gain some more confidence. And I think he's gonna be a key difference maker come March. Obviously Dalton's gonna get his, but also the teams are gonna start focusing on him, and we need another outside shooter who can sort of relieve that pressure. I almost want to say like Vescovi's are kind of going through the same drought right now, so I'm really hoping to see both Gainey and Vescovi find their way out. At least it seems like Gainey's coming out of it, so it's really encouraging to see.
Yeah, and it was really hard, I think, watching Vescovi tonight. I mean, the guy came in and gave solid defensive effort, hustle plays, good assists, but then he's doing unnatural things that I've been accustomed to watching him do over the 4 or 5 years that he's been in Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think he took his first shot with, I don't know, like 4 minutes left in the first half. That was his first shot of the game.
And he hesitated. He did a little pump fake and then waited. Like, oh, okay, let me finally take a shot. So
right, and then they were running set plays for him, getting him on the baseline, off some back screens there, and they were like, shoot it. And I remember specifically one play that he passed up, he hesitated, dropped it down to Jonas, and then he came in kind of off a give and go in the lane, scored on the layup, fouled, and won. And as soon as he set up, he locked eyes with Rick Barnes, and Rick was like, "Why didn't you shoot it in the corner?" Right? And he just challenged him, like, "Dude, you are a shooter. You're one of our better offensive players, and especially from the 3-point line. Like, shoot the damn ball. Just do what you've always done here, and quit being scared." But it looks like he's super gun shy at the moment, and I really don't know what the explanation of that is. If it's him just lost in what his role is on the team. And, I hope moving forward, because this is his last year, I want to see him kind of go out on a high note, not taking anything away from Dalton. I think there's opportunity for him, Dalton, and whether it be Jonas, Triple J, now he's kind of showing some life, or Jordan Gainey, kind of sharing that scoring role And then Zakai he's a glue guy, right? Zakai's going to do what Zakai does. One night he's going to score 26. One night he's going to score 11, but he's going to have 15 assists. That's just what he does, right? So, I'm really interested in seeing the story kind of play out with Santi. We've been critical on our show about him and kind of how he disappears, but I want him to get back to his roots and not be gun shy and just pull it, spot up, shoot the ball, and drain it like he's done for us in the past.
Yeah. So I want to get your guys' thoughts on our unique position in the SEC relative to our position nationally, right? Like, it's kind of a strange juxtaposition for me. They are 6th in the country, but as of right now, 4th in the SEC. That seems wild. A wild scenario to be in. It's just how the cards. That's just how the cards flowed for us so far. But I mean, obviously, we beat Bama, who is number 1. We lost to South Carolina. We haven't played Auburn yet, and we're 4th. Obviously, we beat everybody else: Kentucky, Florida, Ole Miss, LSU, Georgia. The 11th team in the SEC we lost to, Mississippi State, and then finally we got Arkansas. But it's just a very strange position to be in. Any thoughts there, Andy? Like, how do we stack up against the top of the SEC, being Alabama, South Carolina, and Auburn? And what do we have to do to advance ourselves amongst the SEC ranks? Can't hear you.
Unmute yourself, Andy.
Excuse me. So SEC, the catchphrase is "it just means more." Right? It just means more. We always joke about it. The Twitter community makes memes about it, but it's true. It's there's a lot of competitive programs with a lot of budget into various different athletic programs. Generally speaking, recruiting hotbed for football and basketball. And baseball and so on. So, it's no coincidence that basketball is also kind of taking off. Historically, we would say the ACC and to a certain extent Kansas and Kentucky and UCLA, maybe the Blue Bloods were kind of running the show. But now I think we're seeing more and more SEC schools sort of come up to prominence. Alabama has sort of inserted themselves into the discussion. Auburn under Bruce Pearl. So there's not a cakewalk games anymore like it used to be 10 years ago. So I want to just say that it is kind of funny to see that the 6th ranked team is 4th in standings. But that being said, I think it's all gonna sort itself out by the end of the end of the season. Tennessee will get to play Auburn, so we'll see how that goes. They travel to South Carolina, so there's a good way to get a revenge win, sort of speak, and make sure that we don't fall behind them in standings by giving them another loss in the column. And Alabama, they lost tonight to Auburn. So, and we'll talk about that in a second. So I think it'll naturally sort themselves out. As we've seen time and time again, the committee doesn't really care about the SEC tournament as the final happens on Sunday. And just, sort of going with the historical observation here. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say, as long as we continue to, stay nationally relevant, get those quad 1 wins, have a solid strength of schedule. At worst, I think it's gonna be a 2 seed in the tournament. Sort of barring any crazy upsets going forward. And if one of Carolina or Kansas continues to tumble, they both lost this week. There's a chance that it could ultimately propel Tennessee up to being one of the 1 seeds for the first time in school history.
Josh, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with you, Andy, with the potential for first 1 seed, but I don't know if I want the 1 seed. Depending on what 1 seed that looks like, maybe the 2 would be the better matchup going forward. But yeah, so let's kind of break down what Tennessee's road looks like for SEC title regular season. Because our next few games are against Texas A&M, Arkansas, Vanderbilt, and Missouri, and then back again at home against Texas A&M before we really get into the meat of our stretch run at the end with Auburn traveling to Tennessee on February 28th. I was about to say the last day of the month, but this year's a leap year. So February 28th, Bruce comes back home and plays at the Food City Center with, a really good basketball team. But before we get to Bruce, I mean, we play literally 5 more scrubs. And I kind of talked about it on our last show. I really think Tennessee has the potential to go 6-0 over this next 6-game stretch. I think that has to be the ask here, because the way that we're seeing South Carolina and, up until tonight, Alabama, I think they'll probably shake back a little bit. But South Carolina and Auburn, they're kind of distancing themselves from us just because of the way the season is kind of shaking itself out. If you would have told me that we would be sitting, with 2 losses at this point in the schedule, it wouldn't have been on my fucking bingo card that those 2 losses would have been to Mississippi State and South Carolina. Mississippi State, probably, I think they were picked like mid SEC. South Carolina was picked to be dead last, 14 out of 14 in the league. And then here they are sitting where they're at. So I still think we have some work to do. And that kind of goes back to, the scoring droughts and all that stuff that we were talking about, getting our guards figuring their lives out. And not to be, too nitpicky, like Naveen said, on a 20-point win. But if this was a different opponent tonight, there were opportunities for this to kind of shift a different way. So that's really my take on that. But if we want to talk about what happened down in the Plains tonight, by all means, Naveen, kind of talk about the going into tonight, this big tilt between number 16 Alabama and number 12 Auburn. The final score being 99-81.
Yeah, I mean, I caught a couple minutes of that game, and really Auburn, they play incredibly well as a team. They play very good team basketball, similar to what Tennessee does. But really, they had some standout performances from the other side. Their bigs are big and very aggressive. Williams with 26 points, Broom with 24. Everybody crashes the boards. A lot of blocks from Broom, 5 blocks. And that concerns me, right? We talked about
Broom's a beast, man.
Yeah.
Adu's gonna need to eat his mashed potatoes and his meatloaf, all the protein, and get big down low with him.
Maybe hit Bojangles. I don't know what he needs to do, but he's got to beef up, man.
Get them bowl biscuits, baby.
Yeah, I think
cut the check.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is Tennessee last couple games they've been going to this like super small lineup, like 4 guards and Adu, or 4 guards and Awaka. I don't know if you can do that versus Auburn. Like, you got to play a completely different style, and they beat you from the front court back, right? So they will have those guys play just huge minutes. They have also a bunch of guards that play very well. A lot of like long, almost like NBA wing player people on Auburn, which is not really our strength. We have, we can guard guards very well, and we have like you have White Kobe, but we don't really have an answer for their length. As of right now, I think we'll have to play a different style of ball to beat Auburn than we did today. But yeah, like I think this just proves how wide open the SEC is. So I think that, you really got to be careful, because teams can beat you in different ways. It's not very like formulaic how these teams build themselves. So I think that's one thing to watch out. Like, is Auburn like really, the class of the conference right now, along with Tennessee? So I think maybe Andy, you might have some thoughts on this, or
yeah. Before we get there, before we get to Andy, I just want to talk about what you just said, the class of the conference, right?
Mhm.
And I want to pass this to Andy so he can kind of talk about the new adjusted efficiencies here. Newsflash for everybody. Over this whole season, there's been one team from the conference that's been in the lead, and that's been Tennessee. But after last week, that loss to South Carolina, we've kind of slid down. And the reason why I'm kind of being an alarmist and bringing up Auburn, 3 weeks before we play them, is because they replaced us in the KenPom ratings. All right, Andy, let's talk about where our arch nemesis, Auburn Tigers, coached by our beloved former coach Bruce Pearl. Yes, I'm a big Bruce guy, but I hate him when we have to play him. And just kind of recap and go over their stats and kind of where we're at.
Yeah, well, so for those of you guys that might not be as familiar with the KenPom rating, it's really just the adjusted efficiency margin. So they're taking into account the opponents, quality of the opponents, how efficient your offense is, how efficient your defense is, and the combined score gives you a nice little equation to compare teams across different opponents, different leagues, and so on. And generally, I don't want to say definitively, but generally speaking, it's a good indicator of how solid a team's body of work is. So as we stand right now, Auburn has jumped Tennessee, as Josh mentioned. They're sitting at fourth nationally, just behind Houston, Purdue, and Connecticut. And I will say that Houston is a team that the advanced stats and KenPom just loves, has been like sitting in that number 1, number 2 spot for like last 3 to 4 years.
How is Houston still there after Kansas did what they did to them? I mean,
it's
not
just
a math guy, and I believe Ken, but God, how are they still up there?
Right, and it's just there are certain guys that certain teams, their play styles, it's just sort of like think like Nick Saban, right, or like Kirby. When you get those weak opponents, you win by a lot. You never take your foot off the gas. You cover the minus 24.5, easily. Win by 40 instead of just barely sort of winning by 20, with the bench players, or like Ohio State, sort of like you let CJ Stroud play until 3 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter and let him throw 6 touchdowns. And that's kind of like how it works. It's you got to stomp the bad teams, and then you got to either play good teams competitively or beat them. And generally speaking, Houston has been doing that. I mean, they boast the number 1 defense in the country. And sitting at the number 3 spot is Tennessee. So we still have Auburn. Excuse me, Tennessee's now slid to number 5 after the South Carolina loss. So Auburn on the offensive and defensive end, 3rd best defense in the country, 10th best offense in the country, whereas Tennessee is sitting at 5th best defense in the country, and then the 14th best offense, which I don't think it's that much of a concern right now. Again, just kind of looking at the opponents that Tennessee's had to play now that we're sort of more than halfway through the season. Basically played everybody in top 10 minus Auburn at this point, and Houston, right? Like Purdue, Kansas,
and our win-loss record isn't great against the top 10.
Right, but you sort of
beat Kentucky, but they're not in the top 10 of KenPom. But that's why I'm a little concerned. When I see somebody float to the top, when I see someone float to the top of the KenPom rankings, that's almost a guaranteed lock for an L for the Vols. Just look at the teams that are up there. Every single one of them that are above us in KenPom, we lost to all of them.
Yeah, well, the nice thing here is that Auburn's strength of schedule is garbage. It's garbage. So again, that's what I said earlier. We're gonna see all of this sort itself out by the end of the season.
Cool. Well, again, not trying to be an alarmist. I think things will continue to shake out, but what Auburn did to Alabama tonight was about on par with what we did to them. And like I said, when someone eclipses us and goes above us in KenPom, it gets me a little shaky. So we can scroll on down to number 50 on the KenPom rankings, because that's who we will face off against on Saturday. So let's kind of preview Texas A&M. Andy, I know you got the KenPom up a little bit there. Walk me through what your keys, and then pass it to Naveen to get his keys to victory for an 8 p.m. tip on the road at Texas A&M. And what do you see? The game kind of playing out, and if you want to give an early bet prediction, go ahead and maybe throw one out.
Yeah, sure. I mean, A&M did they're doing pretty well in the SEC. I guess their signature win is probably beating Kentucky. They've also got to play some top opponents this year. They played Houston, lost by 4. They've also got to play FAU early in the season when they're ranked a little bit higher. Obviously got smacked by Auburn. So I don't think like Tennessee should be realistically worry about A&M. Nothing about their stats jump out at me, whether it's defense or offense or their sort of strength of schedule. Away games are always tough. Obviously, I'm always going to pick the turnovers as the key to victory. Limit the dumb, lazy passes. Those like easy like floater passes. I hate. I want to see the effort to make sure that there's ball security. I haven't checked the spread yet, and obviously it's gonna change until the game, so I'm not really sure. Not really a fan of like taking the spread on Tennessee to cover on the road. I don't think we've seen that from this team
We've been
constantly
burned a
this
lot
year.
on that.
Yeah, and always like losing. I mean, not losing per se, but barely winning. At I think it was like against Georgia, for example. And I think those are just gonna be in a tough spot. And Vols after beating Kentucky, likely after Kansas and North Carolina lost, even though the new rankings won't be released until next week. Naturally, the public's going to think that, oh, yeah, Tennessee, great team. They're a top 5 team in the country rolling into this, no-namer. So spread is going to be rather large. I would probably just avoid that.
Okay. That's a good take. Naveen, keys to victory for Tennessee. And are we going to have a letdown after this 20-point blowout and then coming off the heels of beating Kentucky on the road?
Yeah, I think for the most part, Texas A&M just has one offensive threat that we need to stop, and that's their guard, Wade Taylor. I think
Wade
that,
Taylor, yeah.
Yep. I think that we excel in the spot where we need to stop the guard. We don't excel in the spot where, we have this huge big guy that we need to stop. That's where we lack. But this should play into our bread and butter. And I expect another multi-steal game from both Vescovi and Zakai. I think that we don't really need them to go off offensively, but we do need tough defense on Taylor. They do have a little bit, comparable rebounding to us. I don't see any real threats other than that. But they do have a big man, Garcia, that does average 9 rebounds a game. So we need Jonas to beef up, get the Bojangles, get whatever he needs to do again. So that's mainly it. I think, I always say the same keys. So I'm going to give you guys some different keys today. I think that, move the ball. This is our best, like, visually looking game. I think assist wise is very nice to see that kind of ball movement. Secondly, this one's for Rick. Call the timeout, bro. You have them. You don't get to carry them over into the next game. So just like if we get into those droughts, use them a little bit.
Yeah,
And
sometimes I feel like he has a bonus or something written into his contract. Like if he brings this many timeouts with him to the end of the year, then he gets an incentive bonus for it. You know?
it's like I mean, it's like
It's silly, man. Like
it doesn't really make sense, and it's like I'm taking a timeout away from his family or something. It's like a personal attack against him all the timeout. I just want him to do it, and I think that stay locked in on defense, and that'll create the offense. Those are my keys.
Okay, cool. Well, let's kind of switch gears here before we close it out. I don't want to take a huge gap between today being hump day on Wednesday, and then our podcast on Friday afternoon during happy hour to kind of lock in I think a very intriguing game, very big game of interest that I think college basketball fans would enjoy, and that's some Big 12 matchups, especially Baylor at Kansas tomorrow. And then we got some ACC, Big 12, SEC discussion. We'll recap a little bit and kind of seeing where, now that we're halfway through the season, like Andy alluded to a little bit earlier, just kind of where we see the state of college basketball right now, moving into, the over halfway mark, and just how many teams do we think each conference is going to get in, and who's kind of the cream of the crop right now. So, Daveen, I'll go ahead and pass it back to you for Baylor and Kansas tomorrow night.
Yep. I actually misspoke earlier. It's on Saturday, but still, it's a very important game.
Okay, Saturday. I'm sorry. Yep. Sorry to the fans.
That's my beat.
Trained radio professionals here.
Yep. So Baylor at Kansas. Baylor is a very tough team. Kansas, we saw what they did to Houston. That was their perfect game. No hitter, kind of perfect game, kind of performance versus Houston. Everything went right. All the drives went in. All the threes went in important spots. Can they replicate that again? Obviously, they're at home now, but they did just lose to Kansas State at Kansas State. It is that's a very tough place to play in Manhattan, Kansas. Apparently, from what I hear, it's hard for opposing teams to win there. If you look at their home versus away record, you'll see that. But this has huge implications. We got number 4 versus number 13, kind of similar to our matchup at Auburn later this month. This will really shape the rest of the conference. And what I want to get to, obviously, is what you talked about. It's you have SEC, you have ACC, you have Big 12, and you got Purdue by themselves. Maybe if you want to count
UConn too.
Yeah, Purdue, UConn, Illinois by themselves. And it's interesting, right? ACC, the SEC and the Big 12, they have to fight amongst each other, right? Purdue kind of goes in kind of similar to Big 10 East, right? They're oh, okay, it's it's you
Iowa of basketball.
Yeah, they're
absolutely, yes.
Yeah, they're they're kind of scathed on their own side of the bracket. They don't have to face really that many challenges. Edie gets rest. He'll look like a stud compared to these idiots. But Big 12 and SEC is a bloodbath, right? We just talked about it. We're number 6 in the country and we're number 4 in the conference. How the fuck does that happen?
Dude. That's wild. It's unheard of. That's unheard of.
Same thing for Kansas. Number 4 in the country, 4th in the standings.
4th in the standings of the Big 12. It's fucking ridiculous.
It's wild. So, I mean, we have some unique situations. And I just want to get your guys' thoughts on number 1, who's better, Big 12 or SEC? And number 2, how many teams we'll see from each conference kind of advancing. So I'll pass it to Josh this time, and maybe we can get his answer on that.
Man, I know it's going to sound completely biased, right? But it's got to be, for me, it's the SEC, but it's by the slimmest of margins, man. The Big 12, and I've been beating my chest, kind of early to our first month that we've been doing this. Singing the praises of the Big 12. On February 7th, if you'd asked me, January 17th, I would have definitely said Big 12. But the SEC has shown me that there's so much parity within the conference right now. And the 14th picked team to finish in the conference this year is number 1 right now. Like who saw that happening? Definitely not me. All right. In the first time that I'm a college basketball expert, or the next time I'm a college basketball expert will be the first time I'm an expert, right? So, it could have fooled me, but I would have never saw that playing out the way it did. And then we've just seen consistently anybody could get beat on any night in the SEC, and it's deep. And I really believe the SEC, I think they have a really good chance to get 9 teams, maybe even 10 teams into the tournament. I mean, we know the 4 that definitely aren't getting in is Arkansas, Vanderbilt, Missouri, and probably Mississippi State, right? But there is a strong possibility that the other 10 teams get in. I mean, Ole Miss, not for nothing. Chris Beard has done a really great job at Ole Miss so far this year, in my opinion, based off of where they were under Kermit last year. And then they hired Chris Beard in, and he's came in, he's kind of changed things. Obviously Tennessee, juggernaut this year. Alabama's doing great things like they consistently do. So holistically, SEC for me, but man, Kansas, K-State, Baylor, Houston, Texas, even though Texas isn't ranked, they're consistently playing good basketball. And they're a hard beat for anybody right now. Iowa State out of nowhere, they've been good. So it really is a hard conference to survive in either way. But the reason why I'm going with the SEC is I really think the SEC has eclipsed what the ACC used to be. I know that me and Andrew intimately kind of followed the ACC during its heyday. And I know that Naveen, the Vol Hill, definitely followed it pretty close. But I think the SEC, to me now, mirrors ACC 2009. What are your thoughts on that, Andy?
I'm gonna say Big 12. I think objectively Big 12 has the better teams. I think Big 12 is deeper. It's a bloodbath. Don't get me wrong. SEC, I think both SEC and Big 12 are gonna send 9 teams to the tournament. Maybe 10, just depending on how the rest of the season plays out. But when I look at the Big 12, not to repeat what Josh said, but even teams like Texas Tech, Oklahoma, K-State, like
I forgot to even mention Wisconsin. I forgot about Wisconsin, but we all know what Tennessee did to them.
Yeah, well, Wisconsin is in Big 10, right? But talking about Big 12, just kind of like thinking, even like teams like TCU, pretty solid. So I want to say Big 12 is deeper. I think SEC looking like. I feel like the fact that SEC, like we have, the higher ranked team sitting at the bottom of the team is not I don't think it's the parity, more so the top teams fumbling. Like Mississippi State is probably not even going to make the tourney, but Tennessee and Auburn both went there, got smacked, but doesn't really,
right.
I don't think it's the quality of Mississippi State. I think these 2 top teams just thought they could go in there and sort of not hustle and just walk out with a win. And that's a bad loss, right? So whereas when I look at Big 12 team, like other than maybe like Oklahoma State and West Virginia, all the other teams are capable of actually making the tourney. So I want to say Big 12, in my opinion, is deeper. Which will be interesting. Tennessee has a pretty hard schedule. The last 4 games, kind of playing Auburn, Bama, Kentucky, and South Carolina. But when you look at the Big 12 team schedules, man, it's a bloodbath for teams like Houston, Baylor, Iowa State, Kansas, Texas Tech, BYU. So it's gonna be very exciting February and March, and I feel like this year's March Madness is gonna be. We might potentially see 20 teams from these 2 conferences, and it's going to be a lot of fun, a lot of parity.
Yeah, sorry about that. Conference realignment kind of fucked me up with Wisconsin. I'm going back to 2007, but BYU, that one stuck out to me too. BYU, man, they're no longer in the Mountain West. They're playing in the Big 12. So
yeah, I just have got to read you this. The 12th team in the Big 12 is 15-8. overall.
That's nuts.
They're 4-6 in the conference and 15-8. That is a definition of bloodbath of a fucking conference. That's Texas, by the way.
Well, let's also look at Florida. Whatever we did to Florida, and I know at first they didn't look too strong, but when we broke them, and we broke them off pretty bad. Whatever we did to Florida, I mean, they've hopped back and they're 15-7 and they're playing really good basketball. So, like I said, to me, I don't know, I sound like a homer, for the conference. It's still SEC for me, but I totally get your guys' point. And, I will be a Big 12 apologetic all day long. Like, I agree with a lot of your points that you make, that it is a deep conference. It's bloodbath McGrath over there all day long. Survival of the fittest, straight up Hunger Games, whatever cliche you want to put the title on it. But man, a lot of good basketball between those two conferences right now.
I just want to say that the conference realignment really affected these teams. Like, now you got to go to Utah. There's a potential you have to travel from Utah to Florida playing in this conference. Like, they got UCF. Like, I didn't even know that UCF was in the Big 12. That's wild. They got BYU. They got Cincinnati. They're really like expanded, I feel like, just for basketball.
In West Virginia, right? You got Morgantown, West Virginia, Big 12. So
like, you basically have to go all over the United States to play away in the Big 12, and that's definitely going to factor in, right? We're gonna add Texas and Oklahoma, but that's still within our corridor of the country.
Regionally aligned to some degree. Yeah,
this is just throw darts at a map and you're in, right? So BYU is a very tough place to play. You're playing in elevation. UCF always lit. I feel like they're nonstop drunk there in Central Florida, so it's a very tough place to play. And really, you got to travel so much in this conference, and you might think you have a night off against Kansas State, but you don't.
No.
Like, that's what happens. So that's interesting to me. I think solidly you can expect 8 each a piece from these conferences. 10 might be a stretch, but man, like, you're gonna have to make some tough decisions as a committee. Like, can you really say that BYU 16-6 is not gonna make it because
here's where I think it turns, right? And it's an advantage for both the Big 12 and the SEC. Now, we know for the top teams in the SEC or the Big 12, it doesn't matter what they do during the conference tournament, right?
Right.
But if you have those fringe teams that are like, near the bubble, maybe first 4 out, right? They go in and they win 2 or 3 games in their conference tournament. That gives them 3 quad 1 wins right there, right? So that's what I'm saying. It could extend and expand a little bit of the opportunities for us to get 9, maybe 10 teams from one or maybe both of those conferences in the dance.
Yeah, I agree. I would think like team like Florida right now is probably first.
It's a great example, I think. Yeah,
on the bubble.
Yeah. So I think that's very important, guys. When you're betting these kind of things, is look at where they came from. A lot of these teams, like, they'll play on a Tuesday, Saturday is what I'm typically seeing. They'll space things out a little bit more this year.
Yeah, because they have to travel so much.
You have to go, across the country, get those air miles. But man, I think it's shaping up for a very interesting tournament. I think this college football playoff was like a kind of like a red herring for what's coming for us in NCAA. I think it's going to be similar to last year, maybe not with all these like 16s beating 1s, but man, I think like a 10 can beat a 7, a 13 can beat a 4 pretty easily.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you bring that up, because I think we talked about this in other episodes, kind of like our concerns about like true rivalries, right? Mm-hmm. With all the conference realignment and what that's going to do to, the true rivalries or historical matchups. And I think what we're seeing here between the Big 12 and the SEC, especially in the Big 12, like, we're talking about throwing darts. it's giving us really, really solid basketball this year, like top to bottom in that conference. And then obviously when the realignment hits, with Oklahoma and Texas coming in the SEC, it'll be great value added. Do you kind of guys see the potential that happening in football now with conference realignment? Yeah, we're getting away from some of the traditional rivalries, but we're getting in a lot better football games during the regular season that we typically wouldn't get, and that's kind of like what we're getting here in college basketball this year with the way that the Big 12 is kind of structured. So just give me your thoughts on that, and then we'll wrap it up. And I think there's a lot of intriguing matchups that can come out of this, and I kind of like the conference realignment, at least for college basketball so far.
I think it makes better for a TV product. As a neutral, when I watch a lot of these games, like you mentioned, it makes a better, more interesting sort of matchups, and I think it's going to happen in football too. With these like bigger teams like Oregon and Washington joining Big Ten, and then Texas and Oklahoma joining SEC. Now we're getting basically what we used to only see in like a New Year's Six Bowl as a regular season game, like Georgia, Texas, or Oklahoma, Tennessee type of games. So I think that's great for viewership. It does probably suck for a little bit of like that regional color, especially if you're if you've grown up with the rivalry. Yeah. So if you grew up in Oklahoma and you're sort of Thanksgiving weekend, it's the Oklahoma versus Oklahoma State, and I think that's the type of thing that you'll probably miss. I think as a Tennessee fan, like rivalry with Vandy, I'm sure there's a lot of history that goes with another in-state team, but it doesn't but it doesn't really ring true like the Michigan Ohio State or Oklahoma State, or some of these like fierce rivalry games like Oregon State, and and 2 out of the 3 that I just mentioned, it might not even happen in a few years. So I think that sucks, but I agree that it makes a better product for neutral fans, just kind of wanting to see better teams play each other.
Yeah, I'll just add that sometimes it works out that you don't get your rival, but your old rival might come back. Texas, living in Texas playing Texas A&M. Didn't happen for a lot of years. Now we get it back. You guys, Andy mentioned new rivalries. Like, how cool is it that you might see USC Michigan State, or USC Michigan, or Ohio State versus UCLA. Those rivalries you've never seen before. So that brings fan bases together, and that should be a great matchup. For states and for fans and for new fans, right? Like, you don't have to watch Purdue versus, Michigan State in football, like, and bleed your eyes out. Like, you don't have to watch that anymore. Now
there's more suffering watching Iowa.
Yeah. Definitely a lot of intriguing storylines. I mean, it just happened to work out that, we hired Oklahoma's, national championship winning quarterback as our head coach, and now we play them in our first conference game of the year. Who would have thought that, being a thing coming in to the SEC. So all great points. I think this was a really good show tonight, guys. Love talking all these topics. We'll continue to talk about these as they evolve, and as we continue through the college sports calendar, so to speak. So, we have basketball kind of halfway done, and then, we're rolling into baseball. So a lot of cool storylines, prepping for spring football coming up pretty soon, the next 6 weeks. So I'm excited about that. But hey guys, just want to say, for Josh, Naveen, Andrew, thanks for tuning in tonight. Be sure you go in and follow us at all of our social medias. Check us out on Spotify. We'll be back Friday night for the happy hour version of Locky Top on the Rocks. And we look forward to seeing you. Please comment, post, repost, share with your friends. We need the feedback. We need to know if we're sucking, if we're doing a good job, what you want to hear. Give us that. We love you guys. We love all of our listeners, all 4 of them that we have on there right now. Like I said, check us out and Locky Top out. Appreciate it. See y'all on Friday.
Go Balls.
Go Balls, baby.